We've got good. What I would like to do, as people are clearly logged in, just to kick this session off, what I would like to do is quickly welcome everyone, the people, as well as the people watching this and participating in the discussion. As a quick introduction to myself and PD Ports, my name is Frans Collier. I'm the CEO with PD Ports. Who is PD Ports? What do they do? Well, first and foremost, we are a statutory harbour authority for the Port of Teesport and Hartlepool, quite up north on the east coast in the United Kingdom. We are actually one of the largest port complexes in the United Kingdom. We're the fifth largest port by trade. As such, you could argue, or you could say, that we are a national asset looking after the importation as well as the exportation of goods that we use every day in our lives, from clothes to energy to oil to chemicals. Everything that you see around you probably found its way through into your home through the port. 95% of all goods that come into the United Kingdom or are being exported actually go through the ports, and we are a very large component part of that. So that's about me and PD. However, why are we here? Well, clearly the pandemic, and there's no point really rehearsing the stressful impact that it had on all of us as well as the economy, has had an absolutely dire effect on one of the things that we are particularly concerned about, and that is a whole generation of young people that we feel are going to fall in between the cracks in between education and getting into employment. And we've been banging those drums for a while now, especially in the Tees Valley where we are, together with Mark Easby from Better Brand, to really change that dynamic where we want to double our efforts and really bridge that gap between young people who are going to miss out and actually making sure they're getting to work, because there's a lot of questions out there by young people. What I'm going to do, how does it work? I can't go to college, or I can't go into university. There are no placement, there are no internships, there's no apprenticeships. What do I do? Before we go into the discussion, I would like to remind everyone that this session is recorded. It will be uploaded on YouTube after the event, should anyone want to catch up on the proceedings. Also, in terms of Q&A, at the end of the discussion, there's a Q&A session opportunity. You can submit your questions throughout the Q&A section on the right-hand side of the screen. However, if you do not submit your questions to the Q&A section, we might not be able to pick it up. However, there's also the option in the Q&A section to raise your hand, to come onto the screen and ask a question directly to the panel. However, by selecting this option, it does make your camera and microphone live, and you will appear live on stage amongst the rest of us with the panel, if we so wish to invite you, clearly. However, before I go any further, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who will be chairing the event, Les Ridgens. Les, over to you.
Frans, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name, as Frans says, is Les Ridgens. I am here today in my capacity as a member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, where I chair the Ports, Maritimes and Waterways Forum. The Institute is an international organisation. It's been in existence for well over 100 years, and it is primarily the main membership organisation for professionals in the logistics industry. One of the things that we as an institute are very mindful of is simple succession planning. So at the moment, we have, in my opinion, a problem in, shall we say, enthusing young people to come into the industry. And one of the things that I'm very keen to do this morning is to try to show some of the opportunities that are there. And it's, as you will see later on, it's a little bit more than trucks and sheds. And I hope I haven't stolen somebody's thunder there, Ian. I do apologise. But I thought that was a great line. And that's one of the things that I'd like to get from today. So, without further ado, I will now ask each of the members of the panel to introduce themselves to you, and we'll start in the order that they appear on my screen, and that is to ask Mark Easby to say a few words. Mark?
Morning, everyone. My name's Mark Easby. I'm chairman of High Tide Foundation. High Tide was set up on Tees Valley coming up 7 years ago now, from an idea based around PD Ports and Casper Shipping, really to sort of expel some myths and showcase opportunities in and around the river community. There's a recognition, I think, certainly within secondary schools across Tees Valley and the wider community that very few people actually knew what happened on the river and all the career opportunities and job opportunities that existed around there. So it started with river trips, getting young people out of schools, out of classrooms and putting them on a river trip up and down the Tees to show them the operations of PD Ports and other port partners and port stakeholders and the world of industry and the world of commerce and therefore the world of opportunity that existed up and down the river. And from there it expanded into some programs that themed around shipping and maritime and logistics. Our first program, the Shipping Cadetship, followed the journey of a mobile phone and in a very day-to-day way showed young people the world of supply chain and jobs and people and businesses that made an everyday item land on the shelves for people to buy. And since it's turned into its own independent charitable foundation and has grown its programme offer to offer cadetships, which are aimed at Key Stage 3 students and work experience placements that are aimed at Key Stage 4 students, all around taking young people out of school and into workplaces to sort of see, feel and understand what the world of work looks like. And like I say, certainly from a Tees Valley perspective, just try and raise aspirations and showcase the job opportunities and careers opportunities that we have here in this region. Obviously, and we can talk a little bit later about the work we're doing to change and adapt in the current circumstances. But in March, that business model stopped dead almost as schools shut down and businesses closed the doors. So we've had to adapt and we've had to try and continue our work and look at innovating and digitising some of our programmes. And we can talk a little bit more as we get into the discussion about how we've done that.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. I'll move on to Ian next, if I may.
Morning, everyone. My name's Ian Nicol. I'm head of logistics at Career Ready. You'll hear some similarities between what we do and what Mark's just shared vis-a-vis High Tide. Career Ready is a UK-wide charity that works with over 400 schools and colleges. And we celebrated our 18th birthday this year, but as you can appreciate, as a result of COVID-19, those celebrations have been somewhat muted. But we were set up to help to empower young people from less advantaged backgrounds and to boost social mobility. In our view, every young person, regardless of background, deserves the opportunity to kickstart a rewarding future. With regard to logistics, for the last 7 years, I've led our award-winning Think Logistics project, which raises young people and teachers awareness of logistics and supply chain. And as Les just mentioned, challenging that stereotype that it's just trucks and sheds. So we use logistics volunteers to promote the great careers on offer to young people and help to develop new talent pipelines for logistics businesses. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Now, our final member of the panel is perhaps, in my opinion, and I hope I'm not embarrassing her here, the most important member of the panel today. And that is because this whole thing is about promoting young people and the opportunities. And Emily, that I'm about to introduce, is a case study in point. Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Les. Yeah, as you've already said, I've been through the Career Ready programme and the Logistics Academy programme, and I was lucky enough to be offered a job here at PD Ports as an apprentice civil engineer at the end of that programme. And without that programme, there's no way that I would be where I am today. And I sort of try and shout about that as much as I can, because I think more young people should have that opportunity. So yeah, I think it's something that we should all be talking about as we are today.
Emily, wonderful, thank you. Okay, so brief introductions to the panel over. In terms of opportunities, as Ian's rightly pointed out, and I did steal his line, and I do apologise, but the trucks and sheds analogy, I think, is perhaps one of the greatest challenges that we face in terms of getting young people interested in a much wider and more diverse range of topics that logistics covers. And I know that there is a great deal of interest in technology, and perhaps the logistics industry and the supply chain in particular is one of the best opportunities for young people to be involved with the technology side of the business. And we do use technology a lot, and I'm pretty sure that there will be greater opportunities in the future in that area. So that is something that I certainly personally am keen to try to promote, to put that message across to young people, to say, you know, it's not just getting your hands dirty, although there's opportunities for those of you that like that. I mean, there's a lot of engineering, for example, in the supply chain, and that's a great opportunity for everybody, young people in particular. So that's something, again, that I'd be keen to sort of get across. So basically now, to the audience, if there are any questions, comments, points, or anything you'd like to raise, then the panel are more than happy to look at that and to interject as and when we feel necessary. So if there's anything that you'd like to ask from the audience, we'll be happy to deal with that. I think you've been briefed on how to ask the questions. So perhaps if any of the panel members in particular have a point they'd like to make, this is a good time to do it.
Okay, can I kick that off, Les? Technology is going to be an increasing important part in just about everything that we do, right? I just showed my mobile phone here, and whilst I'm absolutely inept to understand all the functionalities that sit on it because I'm not very IT savvy, we all think it is perfectly normal to press a button on that one and actually have a pair of shoes or a sweater or a pair of roller skates delivered to your front door by the end of the day or first thing tomorrow morning. It isn't. It is insane. I mean, the processes that sit behind the supply chain by managing that on the clock, on the dot delivery that we all are now so accustomed to, takes an incredible amount of planning and technology. However, the whole logistics chain is so much more than just trucks and sheds, as you already pointed out. It is about actually the whole technology that's around it, but more to the point, it's also everything that comes with enabling these trucks and sheds and the ports. I mean, that's also one of the reasons why we asked Emily to be in the panel. Because Emily, and correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, you had an internship with PD, and you had a very strong desire to study civil engineering. And you got in touch with us saying, actually, I want to be a civil engineer, but can I learn on the job? And you were actually quite bold in the sense that you approached us saying, I want to work with you, and can you help me with my education? And here you are, where I think we're now going to sponsor you all. I think you know what you're going to do till the end of 2028 or something for when you then become a chartered civil engineer.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, maybe, Emily, just from your perspective, can you just talk us through sort of your journey and how you actually, because it's you create your own success here, how you actually took the initiative which ultimately led you to where you were? Because I think there's a lesson to be learned for all of us, how young people can actually plan their path forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went through the Career Ready program, and that was through college. So Career Ready came into college and said to us, like, we're running this program, who wants to take part in it? And it was nothing that we were forced to do. And to be honest, there wasn't a massive drive from the college to do that, which was a shame. But I'm so glad that I took the decision to go in and listen to what they had to say, because it was like amazing that this opportunity wasn't pushed by the college, really. I think it was a little bit of drive of they wanted us to go to university and perhaps didn't understand at the time. I think they're doing more now they've seen the results from some of the students there. But I don't think at the time they understood exactly what you could get from it. And when I went through that program, I was given a mentor from PD Ports, who was one of the directors of PD Ports at the time. And he sort of helped me through that whole journey from college, moving from college into the workplace, and also moving up into university as well. So it was a big change, and it was nice to have someone there that had been through that before, had gone into the world of work and could help me out with that, especially someone who knew the industry as well. So it wasn't just like you were trying to be taught out of a textbook or out of things people have said. Like, he knew what was happening in that industry at the time and could tell me exactly what I would be going into. So it was really nice to have that mentor, but also we went on workplace visits and got to see those places for ourselves and figure out whether that was somewhere that we wanted to work. And I remember coming to PD Ports for the first time on the tour, and I was just like gazing around at everything like, oh my God, I didn't even know this was here. And I've lived in the area all my life, and I really didn't know this was here. So it was really nice to see that. And then decide after the internship, I was lucky enough to get a 4-week internship with the engineering department, as you said, because you were willing to sort of adapt the programme from both sides, from PD Ports and Career Ready, and say, yeah, we'll put you with the engineering department. So after that 4-week internship, they actually offered me a permanent position here as an apprentice civil engineer. And that was something that I jumped at because, as you said, it's put me through, well, started to put me through my degree. I'm going through my degree now. And the experience that I'm getting at the same time is unbelievable. It's something that I never would have got going through full-time university route. And I think it's so invaluable, the amount of experience that you get. You're coming out as an experienced, qualified engineer, and it's really good. I'm so glad I went this route.
Well, you sort of, and we'll go back to the subject matter, Les, but just for everybody listening in, 2 things here, Emily. To be fair, you created an opportunity for yourself, because whilst we've got a very strong tradition, this is not about sort of promoting PD, it's just the way that we work. We employ a shitload of apprentices. We've always done that. I think by the end of Q1 next year, we will have 50 apprentices in our business. But I don't think at the time when you approached us, we actually were looking for an apprentice civil engineer. But you created an opportunity because you said, hello, I'm here, and this is what I want to do. Well, listen to what you're saying. Like, right, kid, she really wants to do this. And there was a lot about you in terms of you basically telling us that this is what we were going to do. And you created an opportunity for yourself. So it's about, I think the message here is that you have, as young people, and I don't know how many people are listening in or how this message is going to get spread across, you have to be, can I say, ballsy, you have to be enthusiastic, you have to show the initiative, you have to go out there. Things are not always handed to you on a plate. You have to fight for it. You have to keep on trying, which is exactly what you have been doing. Before we move on, can you just, in half a minute, give a bit of an appreciation of what you actually do at PD from a civil engineering perspective? Because there are a lot of people listening and saying, well, it's a port, what does that mean? Well, it's probably ships. It's big ships, it's big keys, it's everything we do is big. But just give a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that you champion within PD.
Yeah, so when I first arrived at PD Ports, to be honest, on the internship, I wasn't sure what this job was either. But on my internship and through the last couple of years, I've learned that there's a lot more than, as we've said, trucks and sheds, a lot more. So there's, as you've said, there's the huge keys that we manage. There's lots of different types of civil engineering in my job personally, because if you go into a more specialised field where you're just looking at maritime structures, you would just look at keys, you would just look at say breakwaters and things like that. But in our sort of job here in PD Ports, we have to look after all of the buildings, all of the offices, all of the sheds, all of the road networks, all of the services, all of the maritime structures. So we have grade 2 listed buildings as well that we look after, which are always really interesting to work with. The lighthouse on the end of Southgare, we look after the whole of Southgare and Northgare and all of the other breakwaters that we have, as well as Hartlepool Town Wall, which is a listed structure. So that one's always really interesting to work with. But there's such a huge range of different structures that you look after and different types of engineering that you do on a daily basis. There's never ever 2 days the same, which is something that I love about the job. Because I think if I'd have gone into a more specialised field, I think I probably would have got bored a bit easily. And yeah, there's never ever 2 days the same here. You're always doing something different, which I love.
Emily, that's wonderful, Franz. Thank you. I've got a question that I'd like to aim particularly at Mark and Ian, and that is that, excuse me, we've spoken about Emily, about her proactive approach, about she's going to onto university. What opportunities do we have for those that are perhaps not as academically minded? The classical, want to leave the education system as soon as we can, but want to have a career. I feel that our industry offers opportunities at both ends of the academic spectrum. So I'd be interested to get a view from Mark and Ian in particular about how we can assist those younger people.
I'm happy to kick off, Les, and I think it's a really, really important question. Young people, I think particularly if we look at the impacts of COVID, and Franz alluded to this earlier, I saw this quote in The Guardian from a young man aged 21 in October, and I think it sums up the situation so well. I have pressed the pause button on my life, and although I am dying to resume it, I don't even know if there's a play button there anymore. And I thought that was very, very poignant. And I think those young people who are, and I know that Emily wasn't overdone with self-confidence, because I know that she made the point that she went into that hall to listen to the Career Ready presentation. If she hadn't taken that decision, she would be where she is now. So I think what we have to do, and there's lots of research evidence to confirm this, that employers working with young people helps to develop their self-confidence. I think that's a really important starting point. Research evidence confirms, and again Emily mentioned it about the ports, young people and their families know very little about the work and the apprenticeship opportunities that are available in their locality. So employers going into schools and colleges can share that information, showcase those opportunities. And I think that the third point, a very important one, is mentoring. And again, it's a point that Emily made. We just at Career Ready, we've just produced a report called How Employer Engagements Boost Local Social Mobility, Attainment and Wellbeing for Young People. This was based on interviews with 500 of our alumni. And what came through very, very strongly is the value of mentoring. And initially, young people might not have the confidence to work one-to-one, so we offer group mentoring, for example. But working with somebody outside of their immediate family, or outside of school or college, is very, very powerful. In fact, it's transformational. And one of the recommendations we made in our report is every business should be offering to mentor young people in their local school and college. And I know it's very difficult and very challenging given the circumstances that they're in, but that is going to be transformational for those young people who are unclear about what path they want to take and don't necessarily want to go down the academic route. I'm a big fan of apprenticeships, and I think we need to promote apprenticeships much more. Sadly, I think logistics is one sector that offers fewer apprenticeships than a lot of other sectors. So I think there are lessons to be learned there, Les.
Ian, thank you. Just a question now from one of the members of the audience, and I'm going to address this to Mark. And the question comes from Julie, who says that she's been delivering STEM careers advice for 10 years, but young people are just not aware of the opportunities that are available to them, and how can we improve this?
I think there's lots that we can do. There is lots of great stuff going on, certainly in Tees Valley, but I think there's a number of opportunities for businesses to shout louder and shout prouder about what they're doing. We talked about PD Ports being a hidden business, and there's lots of people around the Tees River community and massive businesses to small innovative startups that are just hidden and invisible from certainly the wider community perspective, and definitely within classrooms and teachers and career advisors. So certainly some of the work that we're doing in High Tide is trying to promote some of those businesses so people can just understand that they're there in the first place, but also what they do and who they do it for, and the type of job roles and career opportunities that exist within them. But for us, I think it's partly about joining the dots. There's lots of businesses that are very keen to support young people and talk about what they do, and we've heard Emily's sort of inspirational story. But also there's organisations like High Tide, Career Ready. There's some work obviously that's happening with people like Tees Valley Careers. But joining the dots on these things, so schools and young people know where to go to look for this stuff, and be that catalyst that connects industry with education. I think there's lots more work that can be done with that, and possibly some leadership that needs doing around that in regard to that signposting job. High Tide, with its very small team and its very small resources, that's privately funded, is doing a great job. But ultimately, we're one piece in a very big jigsaw, if you like. We've got about 100 members that we work with. Some around the river, some in the wider supply chain, covering creative and digital and finance and law. And we do what we can with the skills that we work with directly, but we want to do more. And we know there's other organisations that want to do more as well. So I think partly it's more collaboration, more joining the dots, building that journey for young people from primary all the way through to big decisions that can make in secondary around vocational route, university route, apprenticeships, internships, and really, really blowing open the perceptions around what those options are and how they work. So we certainly don't have all the answers. We're doing our little bit and working hard to do that within High Tide, but I think working more in partnership with others around us and like I say, joining those dots to really connect industry and education is absolutely fundamental. And more than open to have discussions with anyone about how High Tide can play a role in that. We're already doing that with the Logistics Academy, North East School of Shipping and Career Ready and others. And I think rather than competing, and we talk to businesses that don't know the difference between the Tees Valley Careers through the High Tide to Career Ready. And if a business is willing to open its doors, we've got to make it really easy to do that. No matter whether they want to invite a bunch of primary school kids to ignite a spark, or whether they're bringing a GCSE student in so they can really hone down what career decisions that they're making. We've got to make it super easy for businesses, especially in the climate that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, as we seem to have lost less, I'll take responsibility for chairing the panel debate. I'm actually looking at all the Q&As that are coming in. There's some really, really good ones from from quite a lot of people, Jackie Donnelly, Julie Harrison. I'll get to some of the questions. There's an observation here about all the good work that High Tide is doing. Thank you, Julie, for pointing that out. Just for you, Mark, on High Tide, because it goes to a question that Jackie asked, how can we support career leaders within schools when the work experience environment has changed so much within COVID? Because I think that gets to the heart of why we're sort of talking today, is that there's not always a lack of aspiration, but young people simply don't know what's out there. And that the one thing that we've identified with High Tide all those years ago when we set it up is that when you look at the Tees Valley, it's actually it's a huge conglomerate. It's a manufacturing center of excellence for chemicals and all sorts. There's so much going on, and there's so many kids within the Tees Valley who've got no Scooby-Doo what's really going on. Actually, Emily, you had no idea what it was all about until we show you around, and all of a sudden you're standing on the dockside with all these enormous ships and in the fifth largest port in the United Kingdom. Like, that was on my doorstep. I had no idea. So Mark, back to you. How do we facilitate that bridge with the career leaders in schools whilst we're trying to work through the pandemic? Maybe it's also a question around all the good work that you're doing around High Tide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our business model fundamentally changing much as the rug was pulled on all our workplace-based programs. So we almost had to decide: do we sit on our hands till we can start them up again, or do we change? And actually, we brought forward some ideas that we had to try and digitise some of the work that we're doing. First of all, we launched our Learning Hub, which is on our website, which was trying to get all our business members to do Q&As, career journeys, videos, downloadable resources that we could put online that young people or career leads or teachers could download and share. And that was really about igniting a spark, understanding business on Tees Valley, understanding the world of opportunity, and just seeing some of the career journeys, including the likes of Emily, that tells her story about going from education into industry and what that might look like. So that was something that we tried to do quite quickly, and like I say, just that initial connection of seeing business, seeing people behind the job roles, understanding what they do and how they got there was something that we felt was really, really important to us. And secondly, which we're going to be launching in January, is our virtual work experience programs. And they're going to range from inspiration days, where we get the young people get an introduction to shipping, or an introduction to logistics, or an introduction to engineering, from a number of businesses talking about what they do and how they do it and the type of job roles that they exist within their businesses, through to much deeper 3 to 5 day work experiences, but all delivered digitally through a really interactive, live, engaging platform, which for us creates a massive opportunity, because we were restricted in our physical programs by the size of a minibus or the size of a boardroom that a business could have, or smaller businesses not being comfortable facilitating a group of young people actually going into the workplace. Actually, some of those barriers have been broken down by delivering this virtually, and hopefully we can increase our reach. We can deliver much more for young people, but then hopefully that can be a bit of a recruitment ground for some of our physical programs when we can start up again. So thinking about that journey of watching someone like Emily on our Learning Hub and understanding her career journey, going on one of our logistic inspiration days on our virtual platform, going on a 3 to 5 day work experience with PD Ports, for example, and then being able to see and feel the workplace in reality with one of our physical programs is something that's really exciting when we're building that offer. But again, we're a small foundation. We need resources and support to be able to do that. And we need to be collaborating with businesses and other organisations and working with schools and career leads to really communicate that offer and communicate that value. But equally, things change very quickly in schools. Career leads change. Sometimes they've got a dedicated career lead. Sometimes it's a PE teacher that does it as part of his day job. So we need communication from schools about how we need to be able to work. We're designing programs that we feel are really valuable, but they need to be co-created and co-designed with schools and career leads as well. So we want much more engagement coming from schools to us.
Franz, can I just add something? I think Mark's points are absolutely spot on. All I'll just add, because obviously we've got a team of regional managers working with those 400 schools and colleges, and they build relationships with careers leads, and it's absolutely essential. People may well be aware of the Gatsby benchmarks, which are at the heart of determining what good careers advice and guidance looks like. And one of the things that we do through Career Ready is what we call careers in the curriculum, because it's really important that young people can recognise that if they're doing English, maths, science, what careers can be generated from that experience. So I think that's really important. We've got examples of role models who share their experience, how their career developed. The other thing I would also make the point, again, reiterate what Mark said, we were faced with a massive problem because of the critical part of the Career Ready programme, 4-week paid internships that Emily articulated earlier about her experience at PD Ports. We were looking at probably around about 1,800 young people going out on work experience or paid internships in the summer. All of them disappeared as a result of COVID. So what we've done, in the same way that Hindsight have been agile and fleet of foot, we launched a skills festival in the summer, a virtual skills festival where we had 1,500 students, 200 volunteers and 100 employers taking part. And then in October half term, we offered 550 work placements, virtual work experience placements, provided by 126 employers. And learning on the job doing that sort of thing, but actually it went really well. We learned a lot of lessons, and we've already got in place contingency plans. If we can't get back to face-to-face internships in 2021, then we'll offer virtual work experience placements and virtual work visits as well. And I think we just have to be fleet-of-foot and agile and responsive. But that partnership with schools is absolutely critical to the success.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Ian. Your line gets slightly distorted every so often, but we got the gist of what you said. Just going back to the sort of the living example of how we sort of get into schools then. Emily, when you were at school, you had no idea about PD Portage existing, but you got a sort of a flavour for what was out there through High Tide, if my memory serves me well.
It was through the Logistics Academy in Career Ready.
Yeah. So just, I mean, as we know in the middle of this pandemic, and which is the reason why we're talking about this, what else do you think we ought to do as sort of wider the businesses and the foundations such as High Tide to really start to bridge that gap in terms of reaching out to young people and tell them that actually, and I'll get to creating the opportunities within businesses too, by the way, I'll get to that very shortly, but what else should we do now in the middle of the pandemic to really reach out to those young children out there, those young kids, those young people, and saying, come on, there's opportunities out there. We're here. Are we missing a trick?
I think it's probably going in the right direction. Definitely more than, say, when I was at GCSE level. There was no talk of anything like this really when I was at GCSE level from schools. But I think it doesn't sound great, but I think sometimes kids in college and school have to be like forced to sit down and listen about it. Like they won't give up their break time or their lunchtime to go into the hall like some of us did. Like because it was on a lunchtime, there was few people went in. But when a university came in to speak to us, it was in lesson time and the whole year group was forced to sit and listen to them. I say forced, but you know what I mean. So I think there needs to be something a little bit more like that from colleges as well. And I don't know whether that's something that High Tide and Career Ready can push with the colleges and schools. But I've said sort of from the beginning of coming out of the Logistics Academy that there was a difference when universities came in to speak to us and when Career Ready came in to speak to us through the schools and the colleges. And there wasn't as much of a push from them for us to all sit down and listen. And I think sometimes with teenagers, it has to be a little bit like that, unfortunately, because not everyone will come in. And I think they'll probably realise quickly the benefit when they do listen. So, yeah, that's probably the only thing I'd say. But that I expect that could be done virtually as well, because you could set up a call like this, but with a hall full of college students, and the same talk that I got would be able to be delivered to them, I think, and I think they would still get the benefit from it virtually. So yeah, that's probably all I'd say. Yeah,
that's a good point, actually, Emily. Because we've all been teenagers in somewhat a long time ago for some of us, to be fair. Not for you, but clearly me and some other panelists. Crikey, when I was 16 and 17, did I have any idea what I wanted to do, other than I wanted to do exactly the same thing as my big brother did? No, I didn't. And just by the way that my career sort of developed, I ended up doing what I'm doing. And as it so happens, I'm loving what I'm doing. But like you, in the schools that I went to, there was absolutely no pointing towards the opportunities that were out there. You were just there to learn on the subject matters, and you've left to figure it out to your own device. So probably, I guess, one of the pointers you gave us here, and one of the key takeaways from the session that we're having today, is about actually for schools to take a more leading role to demonstrate to the young people. They've got that appetite to learn and to understand, but you probably have to take them a little bit more by the hand. So no, sit down and watch what's out there, and then it might actually spark that interest for them to get involved, or to actually do what you did, saying, "Oh, that's what I want to do." Question then, which came from Julie Harrison: are you a STEM ambassador, Emily?
I'm not at the moment, no, but I've been working with the ICE Graduates and Students Committee on that front. Myself and Charlie, the other apprentice here, we've both been attending those meetings, and it's something that we're looking into because I think it's a really useful sort of programme for kids in schools. Obviously, that's been stopped at the moment as well because of COVID, not allowed to go into schools anymore. But when that's back up and running, I think it's something that we'd definitely look at. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, apologies for my IT glitch, but I'm back with us now, so I hope I haven't missed too much. But I've just picked up one of the questions that has been asked by the audience, which I'd like to put to the panel as a whole, and it's from Jackie Donnelly. And Jackie says, how are we engaging on these topics with careers teams within the Tees Valley area, and organisations such as the Girls Network, which has recently been set up to mentor young females in Tees Valley? So perhaps, Franz, if you would like to start us off with this, if we have any contact with these organisations.
Yeah, would you mind if I kicked it off, and I'll sort of hand over to both Mark and Ian afterwards?
Sure.
Every effort that we undertake, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's in the public sector, to engage with young people and get them exposed to what work is all about, because actually that's the first hurdle. What is work all about, right? What does it mean to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and to leave the door at 7 to make sure you're in the office at 8 or whatever the prescribed time is? Because when there's an expectation amongst employers that you're going to join them and your working day starts at 8 or 8:30, it is 8 or 8:30. It's actually not 9:15, right? To really sort of underline that. But the point I'm actually trying to make here, I would welcome any undertaking by anyone, private or public, to do it. What I'm slightly concerned about is a fragmentation where we all try to do the same thing but slightly differently. So if you look at High Tide was established, crikey Mark, help me out here, 7-8 years ago, thereabouts, when we kicked it off. And you can see now similar initiatives being deployed by either the Combined Authority in the Tees Valley or by other people, which is all fine. But if we're all going to do the same thing separately from one another, you're actually not as strong to really coordinate the efforts that you're undertaking. So probably my view would be, but Mark, you might have a view, is that I think we need to, or also for the Combined Authority, to engage with initiatives that are already established, who are really deep-rooted within that business community, such as High Tide. And there's some other good examples already, like Career Ready, and actually work with them rather than to reinvent the wheel once again, because I think you're doubling up the efforts for half the output.
Yeah, I totally agree, Franz. I'm not aware of any framework where you can go to understand what the career offer is on Tees Valley if you're a young person or you're a career lead or a school teacher, and you've got sort of High Tides program offer, Career Ready's program offer. Obviously, there's projects and organisations happening all the time, like the Girls Network that was created there. Like we work with Chloe from Wonder Films, we work with Laura from Greenology, and two really inspirational business leaders, if you like, on Tees Valley, as well as the likes of Emily, etc., that were doing amazing things at the start of their career, and we're aware of them. And how can these people really showcase what we're doing through not just High Tide but also Career Ready and others as well? So I think joining that dots is a massive project for us, because we know that we're pretty good at what we do, and we know Career Ready are amazing at what they do, but there's lots of others, and like I say, there's that journey or that framework that we can design together. So that offer is really clear for the young people and the schools and career advisors that sit within them.
Franz, I agree again with Mark. I think collaboration has got to be at the heart of this, and minimise any duplication. And there are some specialist charities and organisations that focus on particular groups of young people, needs, for example. I mean, we're a UK-wide charity, but we're rooted in local communities. That's what we're about, local schools and colleges. And we are very open to working in partnership with organisations like High Tide. I think any organisation has to be very honest and accept that we can continue to learn from others. And I think also, and going back to an earlier comment about STEM, I think from an employer perspective, it's very, very confusing if you've got 6 to 7 different organisations competing for your attention and time and energy and resources. Certainly, I've heard it from employers, why don't you work together? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very, very sensible piece of advice. So I think it is about partnership, collaboration, and that then enhances impact.
Okay, so I've got a question myself now, and we've talked about sort of collaboration between the organisation, which I think is fundamental, but collaboration with the young people. So do we, when we are talking about sort of liaising with other organisations, how do we actually liaise with individual young people themselves and get them involved in the discussions?
I'm happy to start that. Les, is that all right?
Yeah.
For us, the voice of young people is absolutely critical. We can't make assumptions that we know everything about what young people want and what they might aspire to. So we certainly facilitate opportunities for young people to share their experience, whether it's through surveys, whether it's through our alumni network, because we can learn lessons from them. And I'll go back, that report that I mentioned earlier that Career Ready published last month. There are so many lessons in there about the value of internships, the importance of mentoring, how self-confidence can grow, how attainment can develop and improve as a result of that engagement with employers. And I think we have to be very positive and enthusiastic when we engage with young people to promote the opportunities that are available. But I think it's really, really important that we listen positively to it.
Okay, so another question that's come from the audience, if I may, and it's aimed at Franz, and the question comes from Ian, who asks, what are PD Port's predictions for their own employee numbers post-pandemic? What percentage would be under 21, and what baseline qualifications would you look for in a young person?
There's not one question, that's three.
Yeah. I like to get money.
In short, believe it or not, we are actually in the biggest recruitment drive in the last 20 years within PD. So we're the largest private business within the Tees Valley. We employ roughly about 1,300 people, 1,308 to be precise, as I looked yesterday. We've recruited this year, I think, 92 new people. And on top of those 92 people, I already alluded to the 50 apprentices that we want to have by the end of Q1 next year. So I think that's another 32 new apprentices that are coming into our business between now and the end of March, beginning of April. How that relates to where we're going to be from an employment point of view, we continue to grow. Reason being, we're a very big business, very resilient business. We're also one of the fastest growing businesses because, well, without sort of putting myself or any of our colleagues too much on the pedestal, we're reasonably good at what we do. And we are also a key piece of national UK infrastructure, i.e. if the ports stop working, I mean, I know we're all concerned about bread and toilet rolls about 7 months ago, but if the ports stop working, then that's the least of all your worries, trust me on that one. So we've done really, really well. But in terms of the proportion of under 21s, as we take 50 apprentices into our business, that will be typically people under the age of profile of 21. When you then talk about qualifications, we expect, to be fair, none, right? Because the way we typically tend to recruit is really on attitude rather than aptitude. We can learn you the skills, as we're doing with Emily. What I can't learn you is the attitude. What we are looking for in the ideal colleague within PD Ports is people who are prepared to work hard, be positively engaged, constructively critical as well, about their peers and about me and about the business, but who are really willing to go the additional mile. And I can't teach you that. That has to be within you. That has to sit within the way you were raised, you look at life. If you think life will be handed to you on a plate and someone owes you a living, PD Ports is not for you.
Can I just add to that, Franz? I think that's some of the importance we've placed on some of the programs that we have with High Tide, and no doubt Ian's the same at Career Ready. It isn't just about understanding whether you want to be an engineer or a web designer or a shipping agent, for example. It's about what you said before, Franz, about what work looks like and what it means to be in work, and those personal attributes, that confidence, that belief, that raising aspiration. I think these programs like ours and the same with Ian's are fundamental in trying to change some of those mindsets and behaviours. And certainly some of the young people we work with on Teesside, coming from families that generationally haven't worked for 2 or 3 generations, and we try and get them to turn up on a work experience, but the mum won't give them a lift because you don't need to be doing that on your summer holidays. And there's that mindset, if you like. So way before we think about job roles and picking choices, it's all about wanting to work and instilling that ambition and that aspiration, like I say, that resilience and that confidence, and some of those personal attributes from a really, really young age, which we have to work really hard with our young people to instill. And like I say, certainly in these times with the pressure that they're under and the confidence knock that they've got, it's absolutely critical that we're playing that role. So when they get in that interview room with you guys at PD Ports, you see those attributes in them, and they've got that energy and that confidence, and just like Emily, they've got that want to believe and that want to work, which is critical.
Yeah. Can I just add in response? I think it's also about a lot of us, Emily excluded, but the other 4 of us on the panel have been in the world of work for a lot of years, and we take for granted all those values and behaviours about what's expected in the world of work. And young people haven't had that experience, so I think, again, helping them to understand what's expected in terms of behaviours and attitude is really, really important. And I think that comes best through meeting employers, talking to people who are already in the world of work.
Ian, I thought that was a very good point, and I would just add to that do you think young people will listen to the likes of you or I in terms of the ethics of work and so on, or is this process better generated by Emily's generation? And Emily's a great example. Emily, I'd be interested in your thoughts on what Ian has just said about how we can encourage and instill that kind of process into younger people, because the chances are they're not going to listen to people like ourselves as readily as they will to people like you.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. I think, like Franz was saying, it's definitely something that's instilled in you from when you were brought up. I know my sort of motivation and work ethic definitely came from my parents. And I think it is difficult to instill sort of at the last minute almost. So if you're trying to instill that at college level or even at GCSE level, you're probably too late. And I think I think it would probably work for some students if they realise how much they were going to get from that work ethic. But if it's not already instilled at that point, I think it's going to be a pretty difficult thing to do. So it's maybe something that needs to be picked up like from really early on. I know we've had primary school children in to look around the port, and I wasn't there personally. I wish I had been, but apparently their faces was unbelievable when they saw what was round them. And I think it's something that could be picked up from an earlier level by people like us on this panel. Maybe it's not at college level, maybe it's not at GCSE level even, but earlier on. And I think we might even be surprised at the engagement that we got from much younger children. I don't know, I don't have the experience in it, but I think it's something that probably could be considered.
Les, can I just...
Yeah, go on, Ian.
Sorry, because in a sense you posed me a question, as it were. We're not ageist in any way in the terms of volunteers. We welcome everybody, and we particularly want, and I think it's really important, that volunteers from businesses that go into schools and colleges are diverse, that they represent the communities that those young people come from. That's absolutely critical, because then young people see themselves in those volunteers who've gone in. But I think getting young people like Emily in front of 16, 17-year-olds is so important, because then those young people can think, that could be me in 3 or 4 years' time. And that's really, really important. It's something that's tangible that they can aspire to and achieve.
I completely agree. One of the issues that I'd like to sort of talk about is getting access to younger people. Now, one of the things that we do with the CILT, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, is we regularly go into schools and colleges, explain the profession and so on, but that teachers, both in schools and in FE, are under such tremendous pressure now, time-wise, that getting good access is increasingly difficult. Mark and Ian, you're sort of involved in that as well. How do you find that part of the process?
I'm happy to kick off. Okay.
Yeah, take it away, Ian.
Yeah, we're into long-term relationships. We think it's real, and we encourage employers that we work with that building long-term relationships with schools and colleges is invaluable, both in terms of the benefits to volunteers, but also in the terms of developing and nurturing new talent pipelines. And I think really it's about, we offer training to and advice and guidance to our volunteers. And I think it's important that business people go into schools with the right mindset. I mean, I've had employers, and I understand why, complaining we haven't got an email response from XYZ school in 24 hours. Well, their priority is teaching and learning, so we need to just be a little bit more patient on that. The language between business and education is different, and I think what we need are people like High Tide, Mark and myself and Career Ready who can facilitate the relationships between business and education. But in our experience, teachers are incredibly busy. Their priority is delivering a very, very busy curriculum. But as I mentioned earlier, around careers in curriculum, careers advice and guidance is really high profile. Meeting the Gatsby benchmarks is part of the Ofsted inspection framework. So there's lots of drivers there to encourage schools and teachers to take part and to participate. In our experience, teachers want to participate in that engagement because their first interest is the interest of those young people achieving their.
I totally agree with that, Ian. I think certainly in our experience, businesses are incredibly passionate about supporting young people, but can get frustrated with who to speak to, multiple calls asking for their time and their resources, like you've referenced before, and like you've said, and like I've said in the past, actually sort of catalysts or providers like High Tide that sit in the middle and can coordinate that conversation. I mean, sometimes we've got Lauren and Owen in High Tide and much less resources than no doubt you've got at Career Ready, and we feel like we're sort of constantly behind in regard to how our programmes fit with the curriculum, in regard to the timescales and practicalities of getting young people released to take part in our programmes. So that coordination and that communication is absolutely fundamental and needs to be really a ongoing both-way connection between that, and we can play that role and that catalyst and that connector to that industry and put that right business person in that assembly at the right time and inspire them to say the right things and present the information in the right way. But ultimately, I think that coordination role is something that's certainly dominated our time in High Tide, and we've been very much conscious of creating programs and designing content, especially now when we've got a bit of a blank piece of paper as we're going into this virtual world launching next year, around delivering a virtual program that is rich and engaging and interactive and meaningful. And we're looking at those benchmarks and understanding actually what a live experience can deliver and which benchmarks it can actually hit. But we don't want to do that on our own. We want to do it in coordination with the businesses that are going to be delivering that, so they understand the structure and the content and the way that program is delivered. Equally, we need to be co-creating that with the teachers and the career advisors and our education network around us to make sure that they're valuable programs, and even what we name a program around, whether it's a shipping cadetship or introduction to logistics, we've named some of our videos on the Learning Hub, for example, like the People Behind Christmas, that talks about shipping and maritime and logistics. So it brings it into the everyday life, if you like. And I think we could be better at marketing our programs and talking about our programs. So people like Emily think, actually, I'm really keen on taking part in that. But that we see our job to the most part, I think, in being that coordinator, and back to that word about collaboration and connecting each other, I think.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Another question from one of the audience talks about an idea that the person worked on, it's Julie, worked on at James Cook Hospital. But the kind of question towards the end is that careers have changed over the years, and we need to ensure that young people know of these career-changing options, or changing career options even, beg your pardon. And so my question then, based on that, is how do we go about that? How do we tell or inform young people that new opportunities are arising? So perhaps, Franz, if you can kick us off with your thoughts, please.
Yeah, of course I can. So what we typically tend to do within PD is that we issue a lot of press releases, and we try and make a lot of, call it not noise, but exposure on social media, just to explain to the wider community what it is that we're doing. So then when jobs come available, people got a better understanding on what it is and who we are and what we do. We then, when we release, so let's say we win a big piece of business, as we have done this year, which is why we're growing as much as we're doing, recruiting as much people as we do, we then release vacancies, which quite broadly spells out who we are looking for. The bit, and if I'm going to be critical of myself, and Emily will probably kick me if she could, is how we can actually move away from a very traditional way of recruiting, as we always have done, to something that is far more inclusive and far more diverse. And I'll just give you one small anecdote before we're going to bring the session to a close. I was at a High Tide dinner, which was already, Mark, about 2 years ago, I think, when we did the High Tide Ball to raise money for High Tide. And I had lots of young people on my table, including Emily. And as I just was about to get stuck into my broccoli, Emily said, "So, Franz, it's great working with PD. The only thing I see is white middle-aged men. So what are you going to do about that then?" I don't think I ever finished my plate, as she put me absolutely on the spot. And that's the bit that I know, because we try to do all the right things in PD, but we're not a perfect organization. We know we need to change, and it is changing, albeit slowly. But it is about more. It is about more inclusivity. It's about going out there, talking to people from different backgrounds and minorities and whatever people are in life. That actually the business that we are, which is so broad as it is for you too, whether you are a man or a woman or a female man or whatever the case may be, or whatever your background is, it is for you too. And move away from this very stereotyping white middle-aged man annotation that, in fairness, let's be honest about it, sort of sits around our business too. So it's really about not talking about careers that are out there. It's also about talking that the careers are about out there, but it fits for everyone. And once again, when we recruit, I can teach you, not me personally, I'm a horrible crane driver, but we can teach you how to drive these huge ship-to-shore gantry cranes that get containers of ships or big grabs of soya or grain or rock out of ships. We can teach you that. I can't teach you the attitude. Who you are, and what your background is, I'm actually not that interested. I'm just looking for people who really want to sort of be part of PD, no matter what your background is. And that's the bit that I think we need to be more vocal about.
Franz, that's a very good point. Now, interesting question that you raised there, and that is the question of we go out and we talk. So a question that I just thought about is, how do we go out and talk, and do we use and make enough of social media? Now, when I was growing up and coming through the system, there was no social media, but of course it's now very, very important as a means of communicating, not just with society in general, but I would say particularly with young people. So as an open question to the panel, and please feel free to interact here, do we use social media enough? And if not, then how do we improve that as our means of communicating the message to young people?
Well, from a High Tide perspective, it's certainly something that we try to do. Obviously, really relevant for the young people that we're trying to engage with, and equally, I think schools have certainly upped their game in regard to their social media presence and the digital footprints around schools. So we've tried to leverage that and connect into sort of to not just talk about High Tide and its programs and what we can offer, but also our corporate partners, our business members, showcasing success stories, showcasing job roles, showcasing contract wins, etc. So we can really promote a flavour of some of the brilliant stuff that's going on around here, and working with organisations like Tees Business that have got a fantastic website and social media channels that really only exist to promote the business community and industry on Teesside, and like I say, from everything from IT to digital through to logistics to engineering, what's going on within both big and small businesses. And you can take something like digital and creative on Teesside, which my day job business is involved in. There's so much going on, and we're becoming a national digital hub on Tees Valley. How many people know about that on the street? Probably very few. So I think across the board we need to be much better at shouting about sector success, individual business success, and therefore talking about the opportunities and the career that these businesses are creating. Certainly something much more we can do, and obviously digital and social gives us a phenomenal opportunity to do that. But again, coordinating leadership, whose job is that? Tees Business, for example, took it upon themselves to tell Tees Business's story, and they produce a physical magazine that arguably should be dropped in every school across the region to tell people some of these success stories. But certainly connecting on social and sharing some of these newsletters and social platforms within schools would be a really good start.
Les, can I just add again, like a broken record, agree with what Mark said. Social media is absolutely critically important. If you're serious about engaging with young people, you've got to have a significant and successful social media presence. We certainly endeavour to do that through Career Ready and the platforms that we use. I think just to flip that as well, I think businesses need to be aware that young people are looking at your social media, your presence there, to determine, are you the sort of organisation that they want to work with and work for, whether that's from a diversity perspective or an environmental perspective. So it's a two-way street, is this, in regard to social media. But without a social media presence, you're not going to engage with young people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Emily, a question for you then, if I may, in terms of young people and social media. Now, even an old crusty like me is familiar with most of the modern social media. But what in particular do you think would be the most effective social media medium to connect with young people, and why?
To be honest, I'm not that good at social media either. It's not something that I use all the time. I think the way that we use social media is particularly good at places like PD Ports and High Tide and Career Ready, on LinkedIn in particular. But I haven't seen anything. I may be wrong, but I haven't seen as much on LinkedIn from careers programs and employers and things like that on anywhere other than LinkedIn. And I think it's something that I certainly didn't get LinkedIn until I got my job, and that's something that I think follows through with a lot of students. Now I couldn't say which one I think is the best one to use in terms of reaching young people. I know we always use things like Instagram to try and reach younger people as well. But I think we're maybe a little bit need to look forward into other things that people are using. I know this is going to sound really, really silly, but Royal Mail have recently had one of their employees using TikTok, and it sounds daft, but the amount of positive feedback that they've had from using such a young person's social media site is unbelievable. And they've been really, really open and honest in the way that they've done that, and they've supported her through that. And it's something that is really, really different and not a lot of companies are doing. But I think it is a little bit about looking to what's next, because LinkedIn isn't always the site that younger people are on. Maybe it's going to schools and encouraging them to get LinkedIn accounts and follow other employers, because it's something that's right across the board. Lots of employers use LinkedIn, so maybe we need to be encouraging them to get LinkedIn. I don't know. That would probably be my take on it.
Yeah, can I just add to that? You're spot on. I'm not one for social media. I try to avoid it as much as I can, because frankly, whilst I think it's a great way of communicating, get your message out there, I'm not actually too interested in people commenting on it, because you can get lost days on end in sort of reading all the comments that people think it's bad, stupid, or blah, blah, blah. I couldn't care less, which is why I'm not on social media. But Julie did say, time to get TikTok, France. Crikey. Well, I know what it is, to be fair, because my kids are wanting it, and I'm not allowing it, by the way, for different reasons. But I'm very suspicious about social media. Having said that, it is a way of communicating with young people. And actually, I'm just thinking about it, Emily, for you or anybody else out there, people you can relate to. They're not going to relate to me. Young people out there are not going to relate to a middle-aged old bloke talking about in corporate lingo. I get that. But actually hear it from the horse's mouth in terms of all the great stuff you do in terms of civil engineering, when people driving cranes or whatever they do, or managing the dredges or the ships that we have, and actually give a 20-minute insight or 20-second insight in terms of what life is all about, might actually just change that perception. Going back to an earlier question, how do you actually make, when you recruit, how do you make it visible to the wider audience out there what it's really all about? Yeah, maybe actually media such as TikTok might actually be the way forward. I'm not saying I'm converted, by the way, but yeah, I get it. I get the message.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Another question that has come up on the question panel is a reference to using LinkedIn, which we've just spoken about, but there are a number of real-life case studies, particularly the Think Logistics videos, and do we, as organisations, use those? I certainly know that CILT do publicise those, a series of short videos, and they are, I understand, reasonably successful in getting the message across. But in terms of that, can we do more?
I'll kick off, because obviously you referenced the Think Logistics videos, Les, and actually Emily's in one of them. We got funding from the Department for Transport to produce those, and I think my friend and colleague Bethany Windsor is actually in the audience, but we worked in a close partnership with Novus, who offer some great undergraduate programs in conjunction with a number of universities. And those videos are free. They're there for employers to use if they wanted to include them in, say, promotion to schools about careers in logistics. So they're a great resource. They're about 2 or 3 minutes long maximum. There's 2 or 3 a day in the life, and I think a day in the life encapsulated in 3 minutes is, if you're thinking about attention spans, is really, really welcome. We use video quite a lot through Career Ready, but it's got to be relevant content. It's got to be hard hitting. It's got to get a strong message over in a matter of seconds, really. But yeah, so if people can download the Think Logistics videos, and if anybody wants a link to them, just let me know.
Okay.
social can certainly provide platforms for us, but it's about relevant and engaging content, as Ian's just said. And we sort of took our first step into that really this year with the Learning Hub and some of the Q&A videos and that we've taken around some of the career stories and day in the life of. And we're working to improve the format and the length and the engagement around them, and we're learning all the time about what works and what doesn't, and we're sort of finding our own way through that. We've also produced some corporate partner videos and some more polished content, I suppose, where we've accessed some funding to support us to do so. And we're also working with Spark Tees Valley, Andrew Stockdale there, to hopefully get some funding from the Combined Authority to allow us to do more career journeys, Q&A, day in the life of style videos that becomes really, really powerful content to try and bring some of this alive.
Well, go on, Les.
Okay, so there we go. I had a problem with the speaker there. So, again, just looking at questions from the audience. A comment from Julie says, can I just mention the videos developed by Andrew Stockdale on behalf of Bring It On? Short videos were very well received in school. So that's something, again, perhaps that the panel can consider. And also a comment from Julie. Franz, time to get on TikTok. Okay.
We will see about.
Indeed. Okay, let's just see what we've got in terms of other questions. Just bear with me for a second. Again, a relatively recurring theme here from the audience is the idea of getting people like Emily into schools, and a comment that Julie took a couple of apprentices into a school in Hartlepool that used to go to the school themselves, and then the students found that interaction was much more productive, and having young people like Emily getting into schools is the way forward. I'll be interested to see what the panel think of that. Franz, if you want to kick us off, please.
Yeah, we more or less discussed it early on as well. Once again, I don't necessarily think getting a stuffy middle-aged old man in front of a whole bunch of vibrant young people into a room and talking how exciting logistics can be is actually a very good match, which goes back to the videos that Andrew Stockdale, which has already been referenced, are such a good way of connecting with people. But actually, it is about the likes of Emily and all the other young people out there who actually sort of plowing their own way forward in life and taking the chances that come along and creating those chances for them and actually articulate it in their own words, what's out there. Crikey, Emily, if you show the work that you've done on the South Gare and the lighthouse, I mean, just for the avoidance of doubt, for those people who don't know, this lighthouse protrudes into the sea and it sort of protects the entrance into the river. And when the Beast of the East came by, we had waves over 45 feet crashing into it all. And when the Beast of the East finally disappeared, the amount of damage that sits around that particular structure was just enormous. And there's the good people like Emily who's saying, right, I'm going to fix that. And when you sort of put in that kind of narrative and you show the pictures, you show the videos of what we're really doing, I'm pretty sure you're gonna get a few jaws dropping like, oh, really? Whoa, I didn't realize that. And for young people such as Emily to be able to do that, I think would really resonate. Now, clearly, what we don't want to do is Emily to sort of stand in school 365 days a year because I need Emily to fix the lighthouse. Anyway, we'll find that balance somewhere.
Okay, another good question that's cropped up on the from the audience, and this is quite an interesting one, I think, and that is to say that young people are concerned about climate change and maybe looking to work for businesses that are active in doing something about that. How do we then promote climate change within our businesses, and can we promote these activities more?
Yeah, we can, and we should. We are really driving that climate agenda, and I'll tell you for two particular reasons. First of all, if we look at it professionally, I think businesses who do not take climate change seriously will ultimately go out of business. Just listen to what the former governor of the Bank of England said, Mark Carney. This is an existential threat, not necessarily to mankind, but also to businesses. And I believe the public are going to vote with their feet only to deal with businesses that really take this seriously. I certainly am. So for us to remain in business, because I know as we're tendering for business, actually the climate change question gets higher and higher up the requirements for you to actually be able to participate in the tender process. The other thing is I'm a father of three, Julia 7, Noreen 10, and Daniel is 13. And I don't necessarily want to leave them on a planet when I'm gone that is much worse than the one that I inherited from my parents. So we do take it very seriously. And actually, we say in the UK we're going to get to net zero by 2050. PD Ports, we're committing ourselves to get to net zero by 2027. 2027, that's 6 years from now and counting. And actually through the likes of young people such as Emily, we'll be driving that. So we're doing a lot of work around hydrogen. We've actually asked a question by the engineers. So once again, this sits in the engineering function for young people to join our business in terms of really driving that hydrogen agenda, where we want to make a quantum leap step forward in terms of converting the assets that we run to either on electrical power, which we can procure for renewable resources, and for mobile plant that we can't electrify to be able to run on hydrogen. And to run machines the size that we have on hydrogen is not that easy, actually. And there's a huge question mark, but we know we can do it. So once again, we want to be, and we're going to be, an employer of choice for young people. We're going to make a demonstrable difference for when it comes to climate change. I can talk, and I know we're getting to the end of the session here, Les, but I can talk on this particular subject for hours and days and weeks and months and years on end. Trust me.
And I can also myself, Franz. Now, I will just mention briefly that outside of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, my day job, if you will, is involved with dangerous goods. And one of the things that I've seen over the last sort of 18 months is the greater use of lithium batteries, and particularly for vehicles. And we're all aware of electric vehicles. And I know the industry is making great strides to try to improve the efficiency of lithium batteries in order to minimise the use of carbon fuels in transport, and that I think is making great progress. So yeah, it is something that that certainly even people of my age treat very seriously. Okay, we are now starting to come towards the end of the process. So perhaps what I would like to do at this time is, we've got about 5 minutes or so left. So perhaps give each of the panel members an opportunity to almost make a sort of closing statement, closing remark, and comments on the event so far. So we'll kick off with Mark, if we may. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Les. I think the key thing about today is having the debate in the first place and continuing the conversation. I think there's so much good stuff talked about today. There's so much good stuff already happening. How do we build on this conversation? How do we take all the lessons that we've learned and the topics that we've debated and actually take action on this? And we can be better at coordinating with Ian and some of the other people around us. Hopefully we can connect better with the skills that we're working with as well. Hopefully we'll get more communication from them and really put collaboration at the heart of everything that we're doing. I think it would be really interesting and to involve the combined authority again on this and define who should lead this collaboration and this coordination project, and pull some of this amazing stuff together so it becomes much easier for schools and much easier for businesses to help deliver some of this. And we're in no doubt, I think all of us will agree, that young people need us and they need this to happen, and more so than ever, it's fundamental that we get this right. So we want to play our part. With my business hat on, I want to play my part. As High Tide, we want to play our part, and hopefully we can join some of these dots, and we can really build on this conversation and take some meaningful action.
Mark, thank you. Franz?
Just unmuting myself. Well, young people need us. It's also the other way around. We need young people too. One of the big concerns that I'm having in the business that we are is actually succession planning. Who's going to be the new Franz Callier or the new Jerry Oxon, who's the COO? And we need to have this steady stream of just young talent coming into our business who ultimately are going to tell me to bugger off because they can do a far better job in running a business than I am, which is actually not that difficult, by the way. And you know what? It's like people like Emily. And I know, Emily, we sort of keep putting you on the pedestal here, which probably makes you slightly uncomfortable. But you need to have this continuous influx of young people coming into the business who ultimately are actually going to tell the older guard that there's a new way of doing this because you continue to reinvent yourself. I have by long given up now to pretend I'm actually in control of the business other than the strategy. And what we are doing very purposely here, we're delegating that authority for making decisions as far down as we can. And it's actually people like Emily, and there's a whole roast of people that sit within the business who actually take those decisions rather than me. Why? Because they're far smarter and better what they do than I am. And that's the way forward. And you can only perpetuate that continuous cycle of improvement if you get young people joining your business, because if you don't, you just end up to being a dinosaur, and we all know what happened. End of.
Okay, Franz, thank you. Ian.
Thanks, Les. I think it's been an uplifting discussion. I'm going away even more enthusiastic than I was before the start of it. I think what it's done, it's demonstrated again, and I think it needs demonstrating, that when education and business work together, the outcomes are really, really positive, particularly for young people. I think it's a win-win all around. And I do like the point that Franz made where he said young people need us. They need us even more so now than they've ever done. And I'll go back to that quote I mentioned earlier from that young man. I've pressed the pause button on my life, and although I'm dying to resume it, I don't even know if there's a play button there anymore. We've got to do everything that we can to help that young person or those young people find those play buttons so they can really start to re-engage. And I'll just close my input with the phrase that we use at Career Ready: talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. We've got to create those opportunities for young people.
Great, a very impassioned closing speech, Ian. Thank you. Emily.
Thanks. I think that's summed it up really well for me. The talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. I think there's definitely a wide range of people that are wanting to come into businesses like this and do this, but it's just connecting with those people. And I think it's definitely going in the right direction. And the more we can do, the better. And it's something that I know we're all passionate about, is giving those opportunities to young people. So yeah, I think it's really good that we're having these discussions about it.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll finish off from my perspective, and I think we go back to the original question: how can we support young people during the crisis and beyond? And I've picked up personally 3 kind of issues from the discussion this morning. And number one is that we need to use social media in a more proactive and more productive way. We also need to promote more our business involvement with climate change and our willingness to get involved, because that is certainly an issue that young people feel very strongly on. And the final point that I would say is that when we are communicating, we need to get young people in front of young people more than the likes of the panel that we have here, notwithstanding Emily, of course. So those were the 3 things that I think that I've picked out of today. all I would like to do now is to close by firstly thanking the members of the panel, to Mark, Franz, Ian, and of course to Emily. I'd like to thank in particular Lily from PD Ports for all her work in the background. She's done a great job. Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, to Mark, who has organised the platform itself. And I think from my perspective, I've enjoyed it. I hope that the audience have found it useful. And perhaps as Franz opened the event, I would just like to ask Franz just to close it with a few words before we finish.
Well, we're long overdue. I'm going to leave it as it is. There were so many great subject matters covered and answer given. I think Ian summed it up really well. There's lots of talent out there. It's just about creating opportunities, and that's what this is all about. Well said, Ian.